reedy. The air hung heavy, thick with the silence of millennia, a suffocating blanket woven from sand, time, and forgotten dust. It was an oppressive quiet that pressed down upon the weathered stone, the crumbling ramparts of what was once an imposing structure, now merely a ghost on the arid canvas of the Jordanian desert. The sun, a relentless eye in the vast, unblemished sky, beat down with an unforgiving intensity, bleaching the landscape to hues of ochre and burnt umber. Dust devils, like spectral dancers, twirled lazily across the distant dunes, their fleeting forms the only movement in an otherwise utterly still world. This place, a labyrinth of ruins barely clinging to the edge of human memory, felt less like a monument to a lost civilization and more like a scar on the very face of the earth, a wound that refused to heal, eternally whispering tales no living soul was meant to hear. Ethan Vance, an archaeologist whose reputation clung precariously to the fringes of mainstream academia, felt the weight of that silence more acutely than most. He knelt, his worn cargo pants caked with fine, reddish dust, his gloved fingers tracing the faint, almost imperceptible lines of a cuneiform inscription on a fallen slab of basalt. The sun glinted off the sweat beading on his brow, dripping down his temple to mingle with the dust on his cheek. His eyes, keen and perpetually questioning, squinted against the glare, trying to coax meaning from the ancient symbols. A light breeze, barely a sigh, stirred the fine grains of sand, carrying with it the faint, metallic scent of something indescribably old, a scent that always seemed to precede the truly profound discoveries. He had been here for weeks, driven by a compulsion that bordered on obsession, fueled by cryptic references in obscure Sumerian texts and fragmented astrological charts, dismissed by his peers as fanciful mythology. They called him a maverick, a dreamer, sometimes worse. But Ethan knew, deep in the marrow of his bones, that there was something more, something profound. The silence of this place wasn't empty. It was pregnant with untold stories, with a history deliberately buried, then meticulously forgotten. He could almost feel the echoes of ancient voices, the solemnity of rituals performed under alien stars, the presence of beings whose very existence redefined everything humanity thought it knew about itself. The ruins around him were unlike any he had ever encountered. While clearly Mesopotamian in origin, there were subtle anomalies, strange angularities in the architecture, blocks of stone fused with an impossible precision, and an overall sense of scale that defied the known capabilities of ancient builders. It was as if a more advanced, more powerful hand had shaped these stones, then vanished, leaving only cryptic clues. The air, despite the heat, held a peculiar coolness in certain pockets, as if the shadows themselves were sentient, clinging to ancient secrets. The sky, a brilliant, almost unnerving blue during the day, promised a canopy of indifferent stars at night. Stars that had witnessed both the rise and the fall of empires, and perhaps the coming and going of something far greater. Ethan pulled a tattered field journal from his pack, flipping through pages filled with hurried sketches and dense, scholarly notes. He paused at a particular entry, a translation of a Sumerian lament that spoke of those who descended from the heavens and the shining city on the great star. Nonsense, many would say. Yet the phrase resonated with a chilling familiarity. He often found himself pondering the implications of such words, not as poetry, but as literal accounts. What if they weren't myths? What if they were history, deliberately obfuscated by time and intent? He glanced up, scanning the horizon. The vast expanse of desert seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, a desolate ocean of sand and rock. Not a single living thing stirred, save for the persistent buzz of an unseen fly. It was the kind of place where one could easily get lost, not just physically, but spiritually. It was also the kind of place where profound truths could lie hidden, awaiting the gaze of someone brave or perhaps foolish, enough to seek them out. Ethan was both. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through his skull, a dizzying throb that made him grip the basalt slab for support. It was not a physical pain, but something deeper, almost a psychic resonance. For a fleeting instant, the lines on the slab seemed to shimmer, and he saw not the cuneiform, but a complex geometric pattern, a mandala of intricate interwoven symbols that pulsed with an internal soft blue light. The image was gone as quickly as it appeared, leaving him breathless, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was as if a forgotten circuit had briefly connected in his mind, showing him a glimpse of something ancient, vast, and utterly alien. This wasn't the first time. Such flashes had become more frequent in recent months, growing in intensity as he delved deeper into this particular excavation site. They were like premonitions, or perhaps suppressed memories bubbling to the surface. He'd tried to rationalize them, attributing them to fatigue, dehydration, or the stress of his isolated work. But deep down, he knew it was more. It felt like a calling, a whisper from the cosmic void, urging him onward. This specific vision, however, carried a new weight, a sense of urgency that tightened his chest. It felt like the unlocking of a forbidden door, a signal that forces, long dormant, were indeed about to stir. The world, he instinctively knew, was poised on the precipice of something unimaginable, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. If this unsettling beginning has already made you question what you thought you knew, just imagine what secrets lie ahead. So go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because here, every video unearths a truth few dare to confront. The metallic tang in the air intensified, a subtle but distinct shift from the usual desert smells of dry earth and mineral. Ethan took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to anchor himself in the physical reality of the moment, to shake off the phantom vision that still prickled at the edges of his consciousness. His archaeological instincts, honed over years of painstaking work, screamed for a rational explanation. His gut, however, whispered of something far beyond the realm of textbook understanding. He rubbed his temples, the phantom echo of the geometric pattern still burning behind his eyes. It wasn't just a flash, it felt like a direct download, a piece of information forcibly inserted into his mind. The detail, the complexity, the sense of profound alien intelligence behind it, it defied any earthly explanation. He pulled a small, worn brush from his toolkit, carefully sweeping away the sand from the base of the basalt slab. The cuneiform he had been examining was part of a larger panel, half buried, depicting what appeared to be a procession of figures. They were tall, regal, with elongated features and curious conical headwear. Their eyes, though mere indentations in the stone, seemed to convey an unnerving intensity, a gaze that suggested vast knowledge and an ancient, almost sorrowful power. Below them, smaller, more human-like figures offered tribute, bowing in supplication. It was a common motif in Mesopotamian art, depicting kings or deities receiving homage. Yet, something about these particular figures was different. They weren't merely idealized human rulers. They possessed an otherworldly aura, a subtle hint of something other. The sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in hues of fiery orange and deep violet, casting long, dramatic shadows across the ruins. The air, though still warm, began to lose its oppressive intensity, giving way to the cool, crisp embrace of the desert night. Ethan knew he should pack up, return to his modest camp a few miles away, but a magnetic pull held him to this spot. The feeling of being watched, once fleeting, now settled upon him with a palpable weight, not necessarily malevolent, but certainly observant. It was as if the ancient stones themselves had woken up, their silent sentinels now acutely aware of his presence. He remembered a similar feeling from his childhood, a peculiar sensation he'd experienced only once. He'd been about 8 years old, camping with his grandfather in the remote forests of upstate New York. One clear, star-dusted night, he'd woken to an unearthly silence, a complete absence of crickets or nocturnal animals. Gazing up at the vast expanse of the Milky Way, he'd felt an inexplicable surge of both terror and wonder, as if the universe itself had opened its eye and stared directly back at him. That memory, dormant for decades, now resurfaced with startling clarity, an unsettling echo of the profound unknown. Ethan adjusted the brim of his wide-brimmed hat, his gaze sweeping across the desolate expanse. The ruins stretched out, a silent city of ghosts under the darkening sky. He envisioned what it must have looked like in its prime, colossal structures reaching towards the heavens, bustling courtyards, the air thick with the murmur of a forgotten tongue. What purpose did this massive complex serve? The prevailing academic theories suggested a grand temple dedicated to a regional deity, perhaps a staging post for ancient trade routes. But Ethan's instincts told him otherwise. The sheer scale, the intricate details, the almost alien precision of its construction hinted at something far grander, far more profound than a simple earthly shrine. His flashlight beam cut through the deepening twilight, illuminating fragments of pottery and scattered bones, relics of a long-dead past. Each shard, each bone, was a puzzle piece. Yet the complete picture remained stubbornly out of reach. He had spent his entire adult life chasing these fragments, piecing together histories that others deemed irrelevant or fantastical. From the Mayan glyphs of Central America to the enigmatic geoglyphs of Peru, he'd found recurring patterns, symbols that seemed to transcend cultures and continents, all hinting at a common pre-human origin. This site, however, felt different. It felt like the epicenter, the very heart of the mystery. He meticulously photographed the panel, taking dozens of shots from various angles, careful to capture every nuance of the weathering and every subtle indentation. He then made detailed rubbings, pressing acid-free paper against the stone, patiently transferring the ancient script onto a more tangible medium. As he worked, a soft, almost imperceptible hum seemed to emanate from beneath the earth, a low, thrumming vibration that resonated deep within his bones. He paused, his hand hovering over the paper, listening intently. It wasn't the sound of wind or the distant drone of an engine. It was an internal resonance, a deep, primal frequency that spoke of immense power, dormant but not dead. He looked around, trying to pinpoint the source. The hum seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a diffuse energy permeating the very stones around him. His skin tingled, a faint static electricity raising the hairs on his arms. Was he imagining it? Was it a trick of the mind, spurred by his heightened state of awareness, or was it real? He leaned closer to the basalt slab, pressing his ear against the cold, rough surface. The hum was definitely stronger here, almost a purr beneath the earth, a sleeping leviathan stirring in its ancient slumber. The geometric pattern he had seen earlier, the flash in his mind's eye, suddenly felt less like a hallucination and more like an activation sequence, a key turning in a lock deep within the forgotten mechanisms of this place. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content. Hit that like button now and share it with someone who needs to see this. The subtle hum persisted, a low, resonant throb that seemed to vibrate not just through the ground, but through Ethan's very core. It was a sound beyond human hearing, more a sensation, an internal tremor that subtly shifted his perception of reality. He pulled back from the slab, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the scientific method he swore by with the increasingly inexplicable phenomena he was experiencing. This wasn't just another archaeological dig, it was an awakening. He could feel it in the stillness of the air, in the inexplicable chill that now settled over the ruins, despite the fading desert heat, and most profoundly, in the persistent whisper of something ancient stirring beneath the earth. He retrieved a portable seismic sensor from his pack, a compact device designed to detect minute ground vibrations. Setting it on the ground near the basalt slab, he watched the digital readout. The needle, usually fluctuating with ambient seismic noise, now held a steady, rhythmic pulse, a low-frequency oscillation that confirmed his internal sensation. The hum was real. It wasn't his imagination, nor was it fatigue. Something deep beneath these ruins was alive, or at the very least active. The implications sent a shiver down his spine, a cold prickle that had nothing to do with the evening air. Ethan Vance had always been an outlier. Even as a child growing up in a quiet suburban town in Oregon, he preferred the dusty pages of ancient history books to video games, the hushed halls of museums to bustling shopping malls. While other kids were debating baseball scores, he was poring over faded maps of Mesopotamia, tracing the winding paths of forgotten rivers and the outlines of long-vanished cities. His parents, a pragmatic accountant and a high school English teacher, had encouraged his intellectual curiosity, but often worried about his intense, almost obsessive focus. They'd hoped he'd grow out of his ancient aliens phase, but for Ethan, it was never a phase. It was his calling. He'd pursued archaeology with a single-minded determination, earning his degrees from prestigious universities, but always pushing the boundaries of conventional thought. He challenged accepted timelines, questioned established narratives, and dared to suggest that perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's origins were far more complex, far more extraterrestrial than allowed for in the neatly catalogued archives of history. This approach had earned him both admiration and scorn. Colleagues respected his meticulous research, but often dismissed his conclusions as unsubstantiated speculation or pseudo-scientific fantasy. He had lost grant funding, lecture opportunities, and even a tenured position because of his unwavering pursuit of what he perceived as the truth. But none of that mattered to Ethan. He wasn't seeking peer approval. He was seeking answers. He carried the weight of historical orthodoxy, the dismissive whispers of his former colleagues, and the quiet fear of being wrong, of wasting his life on a delusion. Yet deeper than all of that, he carried an unwavering conviction, an innate sense that humanity was missing a fundamental piece of its own story. He saw the gaps in the archaeological record, the sudden leaps in technological and cultural development, the recurring myths of sky gods and floods across disparate civilizations, and he knew, with a certainty that transcended logic, that these were not coincidences. They were clues. As the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the desert into a sudden inky darkness, Ethan activated his headlamp. The beam cut a stark white path through the gloom, highlighting the rough textures of the stone and the swirling patterns of disturbed sand. He packed away the seismic sensor, his thoughts now consumed by the hum. It was faint now, almost subliminal, but it was there, a persistent rhythm beneath the earth, like a colossal heart slowly beating. He felt a peculiar mix of exhilaration and dread. He was closer than ever to something monumental, but what that something was, and what its discovery might unleash, remained terrifyingly unknown. He walked among the ruins, his footsteps crunching softly on the loose gravel. The air grew colder, and the stars began to emerge, piercing the velvet blackness with pinpricks of light. The sheer number of stars visible in the desert, far from city lights, was always breathtaking, a dizzying reminder of the universe's infinite expanse. He stopped, tilting his head back, gazing up at the shimmering tapestry of the Milky Way. It was a familiar ritual, one he performed on every excavation, a silent communion with the cosmic ocean from which he believed humanity truly sprang. As he watched, a particular constellation seemed to catch his eye, a cluster of bright stars low on the southern horizon. It was a grouping he had seen depicted in ancient Babylonian star charts, often associated with a wandering star or a winged disk. As he focused on it, a faint shimmer, almost a ripple in the fabric of space itself, seemed to momentarily distort the light from those stars. It was subtle, so subtle that anyone else might have dismissed it as an optical illusion, a trick of the light in the dark desert air. But Ethan didn't. He gripped the strap of his backpack, his knuckles turning white. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, but the shimmer lingered, a ghostly echo around the ancient constellation. It wasn't just an optical illusion. It felt like a memory, a flash of an event that should be buried, but was instead trying to claw its way back to the surface. He felt a profound sense of recognition, an unwelcome familiarity with that ripple in space, a sensation that told him he had seen it before, or perhaps witnessed it through the eyes of another. A memory that should have been forgotten, of something vast and powerful, approaching from the blackness between stars, making the very light of the cosmos bend to its will. This wasn't his memory. It couldn't be. But the raw, almost visceral impact of it, the feeling of both overwhelming awe and profound terror, left him breathless. He felt an intense pressure behind his eyes, a strange resonance in his inner ear, as if a frequency was being broadcast directly into his mind. The shimmering around the stars intensified, becoming a swirling vortex of faint, ethereal light, and for a terrifying second he felt a crushing weight, as if gravity itself had increased 100-fold, forcing him to his knees. He gasped, fighting for air. The desert night suddenly alive with an invisible presence, a colossal entity observing him from the unimaginable depths of space. A silent, ancient watcher whose gaze alone could distort reality. This second emotional explosion wasn't just a premonition, it was an intrusion, a direct touch from something vast and cold, a memory that should have remained buried, now violently ripped from the ether and burned into his consciousness. The crushing weight lifted as abruptly as it descended, leaving Ethan gasping, sprawled on his knees in the cold desert sand. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against the silence, and sweat, cold and clammy, plastered his hair to his forehead. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them, scanning the star-dusted sky. The shimmering around the constellation was gone, the stars now burning with their usual steady brilliance, indifferent and timeless. The profound sense of being observed, however, lingered, a ghostly aftertaste that prickled his skin. He pushed himself to his feet, his muscles trembling. This was beyond anything he had ever experienced, far transcending the realm of academic pursuit. This was a direct, undeniable confrontation with the unknown, an intrusion into his very being. The memory, or vision, or whatever it was, had been terrifyingly vivid. The swirling vortex, the bending light, the immense, unseen presence. It felt like a direct communication, a harsh whisper across the void, an affirmation that his wild theories were not so wild after all. Ethan spent the rest of the night in his tent, not sleeping, but poring over his research, a growing sense of urgency fueling his every action. He reviewed his notes on Sumerian mythology, focusing on the Apkallu, the wise ones, or sages, who were said to have emerged from the Abzu, the primordial waters, to teach humanity civilization. Many scholars interpreted them as mythical fishmen. But what if Abzu wasn't a body of water, but a cosmic depth, a metaphor for space? And what if the Apkallu weren't fishmen, but beings whose appearance was so alien that ancient scribes struggled to describe them, resorting to familiar earthly forms? He cross-referenced these accounts with translations of the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, which spoke of a celestial battle and the creation of earth from the corpse of a primordial goddess, Tiamat. And most importantly, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which mentioned a great flood and a distant, almost mythical land where the gods resided. Ethan had always found these narratives compelling, but now, under the influence of his recent experiences, they took on a new, chilling literalism. As the first faint streaks of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, turning the horizon a soft, pearly grey, Ethan emerged from his tent. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the promise of another searing day. He felt exhausted, but also energized, a paradoxical state born of profound discovery and imminent danger. He knew exactly what he needed to do. The seismic hum, the geometric pattern, the stargazing vision, they were all pieces of a larger puzzle, and he felt a growing conviction that the basalt slab, the one that triggered his first vision, held the key to connecting them. He returned to the excavation site, moving with a renewed sense of purpose. The ruins, bathed in the soft ethereal light of pre-dawn, seemed to exhale their ancient secrets, ready to reveal what they had guarded for so long. He knelt once more beside the basalt slab, his eyes scanning its surface with an almost manic intensity. The cuneiform, though familiar, now seemed to hold a different meaning, as if his mind had been recalibrated to perceive a deeper layer of information. He meticulously cleaned the slab, using a soft brush to remove every last speck of dust, revealing the intricate details of the carving. He focused on the figures, particularly the Sky Lords with their elongated features. He noticed a faint, almost invisible symbol carved into the breastplate of one of the figures, a symbol so tiny it could be easily mistaken for a flaw in the stone. It was a circle with 3 dots inside, arranged in a triangular formation, almost like a stylized constellation or a simplified orbital diagram. He'd never seen it before in any known Sumerian iconography. He pulled out his magnifying glass, leaning in close, his breath fogging the cool stone. The symbol wasn't just carved, it seemed to shimmer faintly under the direct light, as if embedded with a microscopic, luminescent substance. As he studied it, a strange sense of déjà vu washed over him. He felt as if he had seen this symbol before, not in a book or a museum, but in a dream, or perhaps in that fleeting vision that had seized him hours earlier. This wasn't merely a small carving, it was an anomaly, a clue that defied established understanding. Ethan carefully rubbed the symbol with his gloved finger. It felt cool, smooth, almost alien to the touch, different from the rough texture of the surrounding basalt. As he did so, a faint, high-pitched ping echoed in his mind, a sound that wasn't audible but vibrated directly in his consciousness. It was the same sound he associated with the geometric pattern flash, the sound of a circuit completing. And then it happened. The small symbol on the figure's breastplate pulsed with a soft internal light, a pale blue luminescence that emanated from within the stone itself. It was faint, almost shy, but undeniable. The light cast subtle shadows on the surrounding cuneiform, making the ancient script seem to dance, to come alive. Ethan gasped, pulling his hand back as if burned, though the stone was cold. This was not a trick of the light, not an illusion. This was real, an impossible, undeniable reality. The blue light from the symbol spread, tracing faint, luminous lines across the entire basalt slab, highlighting other symbols that Ethan hadn't noticed before, or perhaps hadn't been able to perceive. These weren't standard cuneiform. They were a secondary layer, an almost holographic overlay of symbols, geometric and precise, interwoven with the older script. It was a language he didn't recognize, yet it felt strangely familiar, as if it spoke directly to a forgotten part of his mind. This was it. This was the Virada I, the first major shift. A small, seemingly insignificant detail had just exploded into something profound. The stone wasn't just a carving, it was a living artifact, a data repository, a beacon. It changed everything he thought he knew about this site, about the ancient world, and about the very nature of reality itself. The weight of its secrets pressed down on him, not with fear, but with an exhilarating, terrifying promise of what else lay hidden beneath the relentless sands. He had found something that gently but irrevocably altered his perception, a small glowing seed of truth that hinted at a mystery far grander and more dangerous than he could possibly imagine. The blue light, though subtle, illuminated the slab with an ethereal glow, revealing the secondary layer of symbols that shimmered just beneath the surface of the basalt. Ethan knelt, transfixed, his archaeological training battling with the sheer wonder of the moment. He reached out a hesitant finger, not quite touching the glowing stone, as if fearing to break the spell, or perhaps to activate something he couldn't comprehend. The symbols pulsed softly, an alien script writing itself across the ancient canvas of the stone, hinting at technologies and understandings far beyond human comprehension. He quickly retrieved his digital camera, snapping dozens of photos, hoping to capture the ephemeral light before it vanished. He also pulled out his spectral analysis device, a sophisticated piece of equipment designed to analyze the composition of materials through their light emissions. Pointing it at the glowing symbols, he watched as the readings flooded his screen. Not just the expected spectral lines of basalt, but faint, unusual emissions, patterns he'd only ever seen theorized in theoretical physics papers discussing exotic matter or advanced energy sources. It was as if the stone itself was embedded with a living, low-level energy field. This place, he now understood with startling clarity, was no ordinary temple. It was something else entirely. The Temple of Kings narrative was a facade, a human interpretation of something infinitely more complex and profound. He thought of the recurring myths of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, as translated by Zecharia Sitchin, a scholar whose work was vehemently rejected by mainstream academia, but whose theories had always resonated with Ethan. Sitchin spoke of Nibiru, a rogue planet, and a race of technologically advanced beings who visited Earth in antiquity, influencing human civilization. Ethan had always regarded Sitchin's work with a healthy dose of skepticism, yet also with an open mind, seeing it as a compelling narrative, if unproven. Now, however, the concept of Nibiru and its inhabitants felt less like theory and more like an impending reality. Ethan carefully began to map the newly revealed symbols, sketching them into his journal alongside his usual cuneiform notes. They were geometric, elegant, and seemed to follow an internal logic that was both mathematical and artistic. He recognized certain recurring patterns, fractals and spirals that hinted at a deep understanding of natural laws and cosmic order. He wondered if these were merely decorative or if they encoded information, a language designed for beings who perceived reality differently, perhaps in multiple dimensions simultaneously. As the sun fully rose, flooding the desert with its harsh light, the blue luminescence from the slab began to fade, slowly dimming until it was barely perceptible. By mid-morning, it was gone, the basalt looking like any other ancient stone, its secrets once again hidden beneath the surface. But for Ethan, the world had irrevocably changed. He had seen the impossible, touched the inexplicable, and now he carried the burden of that knowledge. He spent the next few days in a feverish state of excavation and research. He expanded his dig site, carefully revealing more of the hidden structure beneath the sand. He found more slabs with similar faint symbols, some still dormant, others showing tiny, almost imperceptible flickers of blue light. It was as if the entire complex was a vast, interconnected network, a dormant machine awaiting activation. The low hum beneath the earth grew subtly stronger, a persistent thrum that became the constant backdrop to his work. Ethan's routine was now dictated by this burgeoning mystery. He'd wake before dawn, fueled by instant coffee and stale granola bars, and head straight to the ruins. He'd work through the searing heat of the day, pausing only for sips of water from his battered canteen, his mind a whirlwind of hypotheses and observations. As night fell, he'd retire to his tent, not to rest, but to meticulously document his findings, cross-reference them with ancient texts, and try to make sense of the increasingly alien puzzle pieces. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it was often disturbed by vivid, disorienting dreams, flashes of strange, celestial mechanics, colossal silver ships descending through clouds, and tall, imposing figures moving with a silent, purposeful grace. He missed the small comforts of home, the smell of freshly brewed coffee from his favorite downtown Portland coffee shop, the lively academic debates, even the mundane routines of grocery shopping. But those longings were fleeting, overshadowed by the consuming hunger for truth that gnawed at him. He hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks, not since his last resupply trip to a remote desert outpost. His phone had no signal here, a blessing and a curse. It meant no distractions, no unwanted intrusions, but also no one to share his increasingly unbelievable discoveries with. The isolation was profound, magnifying both his excitement and his underlying fear. One sweltering afternoon, while carefully excavating a section of wall near the glowing basalt slab, Ethan uncovered a small, metallic cylinder, partially embedded in the packed earth. It was about 6 inches long, made of a dark, obsidian-like metal that felt strangely cool to the touch, despite the scorching heat. It was unlike any artifact he had ever seen. Its surface was smooth, unblemished by corrosion or time, and etched with the same geometric symbols that had appeared on the basalt slab. He picked it up, feeling a faint tremor run through his arm. The cylinder was surprisingly heavy for its size, almost impossibly dense. It hummed faintly, a resonance that mirrored the hum beneath the earth, but amplified, more direct. As his fingers closed around it, the symbols on its surface glowed with a soft, persistent blue light, mirroring the earlier phenomenon from the slab. But this time, the light was brighter, more vibrant, and pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like a cosmic heartbeat. This was it, the second emotional explosion, more potent and undeniable than the first. As the light flared, a rush of images flooded his mind, not just a fleeting memory, but a torrent of data, a direct interface. He saw vast, swirling galaxies, distant suns burning with impossible colors, and then, closer, a colossal reddish-brown planet, orbited by smaller moons, hurtling through the blackness of space. He saw intricate schematics, blueprints of advanced machinery, and then a city, not of human design, but of shimmering crystalline towers reaching towards an alien sky inhabited by beings of immense stature and undeniable power. He saw their faces, or what passed for faces, elongated skulls, deep-set eyes that glowed with an ancient wisdom, and mouths that were less for speaking and more for conveying subtle telepathic commands. They moved with an economy of motion, an effortless grace that spoke of superior physiology and mastery over their environment. He saw them descending to a primordial earth, their gleaming ships parting the clouds like divine chariots. He saw them interacting with early humans, teaching, guiding, and manipulating. The vision was overwhelming, a deluge of forbidden knowledge. It lasted only a few seconds, but in that time, Ethan felt like he had lived 1,000 years, witnessed the birth of stars and the dawn of human civilization through alien eyes. When it ended, he stumbled back, dropping the cylinder into the sand with a clatter. His head swam, his body trembled, and a profound, terrifying truth settled upon him. This wasn't just mythology, it was history. And he had just been given a glimpse of the history of the Anunnaki, the true architects of humanity, and the impending return of their home world, Nibiru. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content, hit that like button now, and share it with someone who needs to see this. Ethan stared at the metallic cylinder, now lying innocuously in the sand, its blue light faded, its surface once again dull and obsidian-like. The vision it had unleashed still echoed in his mind, a kaleidoscope of alien wonders and chilling revelations. He felt like a man who had stared directly into the sun, his eyes still burning with the afterimage of impossible light. His hands trembled as he reached for it again, this time with a mixture of profound awe and trepidation. This wasn't merely an artifact. It was a key, a conduit, a piece of technology that bridged the chasm of millennia, offering a direct glimpse into the very heart of the Anunnaki saga. He picked it up, cradling it in his gloved palms. The subtle hum immediately returned, stronger now, a steady thrumming that seemed to resonate directly with the rhythm of his own heartbeat. The geometric symbols on its surface glowed once more, a softer blue this time, as if acknowledging his acceptance of the truth. He felt a profound sense of connection to the object, an almost symbiotic link. It was as if the cylinder was not just revealing information, but also recognizing him, or rather recognizing something within him. The implications of what he had just witnessed were staggering. The Anunnaki, Nibiru, the genetic manipulation of early humans, it all coalesced into a coherent, horrifying narrative that shattered every tenet of accepted history, archaeology, and even biology. If this was true, then humanity was not the product of random evolution, nor the sole creation of an omnipotent deity. We were an experiment, a design, a crafted species, our history intricately woven into the cosmic tapestry of an alien civilization. He spent the next few hours in a daze, meticulously examining the cylinder. It had no discernible seams, no buttons, no visible means of operation. It was a perfect, seamless cylinder of unknown metal, its functionality apparently activated by touch and perhaps by intent. He tried to mentally command it, to replay the vision, but it remained inert. It seemed to have delivered its message, a single devastating download of truth, and now awaited further instructions, or perhaps a different kind of activation. His mind raced through ancient texts, reinterpreting every myth, every legend, every divine intervention through the lens of this new understanding. The Tower of Babel, the parting of the Red Sea, the flying chariots of the Vedas, all of it could be recontextualized as interactions with advanced alien technology, or perhaps with the Anunnaki themselves. The gods weren't mystical beings. They were flesh and blood entities, albeit ones far superior to humans in every conceivable way, who had simply presented themselves as deities to a primitive civilization. The desert wind picked up as the afternoon wore on, swirling sand around the ruins, creating whispering eddies that seemed to carry ancient secrets. The ruins themselves seemed to hum with a new energy, a palpable tension. The earlier sense of passive observation had deepened into something more active, more immediate. He felt like he was standing on a stage, and the audience, silent and unseen, had just settled in for the main act. He began to search the area around where he found the cylinder with renewed vigor, digging deeper, expanding his search parameters. He was no longer looking for mere artifacts. He was looking for technology, for evidence of a sustained alien presence. He used ground-penetrating radar, GPR, sweeping the area in concentric circles, hoping to detect anomalies beneath the surface. The GPR screen, usually a chaotic mess of geological data, began to show faint, regular patterns, rectilinear structures far too uniform to be natural rock formations, lying deep beneath the temple floor. The deeper he probed, the more extensive the subsurface structures appeared. It wasn't just a simple foundation. It was a sprawling underground complex, a network of tunnels and chambers that dwarfed the visible ruins above ground. The scale of it was mind-boggling, hinting at an engineering feat far beyond the capabilities of any ancient human civilization. This wasn't just a temple, it was a base, a facility, a hidden city buried beneath the sands of time. As the sun began to dip towards the western horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the vastness of the desert, Ethan unearthed another discovery near the entrance to what appeared to be a buried passage. It was a large flat stone slab, intricately carved with what looked like a star map. But this wasn't any ordinary star map. It depicted not only familiar constellations, but also several unknown celestial bodies, including a prominent reddish-brown planet with several moons, an unmistakable match for the vision he had received from the cylinder. And, orbiting this planet, a smaller, darker celestial body, depicted as a winged disk, heading directly towards what appeared to be the solar system. This was the Virada II. The revelation was immense, undeniable. He had not only found proof of the Anunnaki's homeworld, Nibiru, but also a representation of its trajectory, heading towards Earth's solar system. This wasn't just a partial truth. It was a monumental discovery that defied every academic dogma, every historical narrative. The Anunnaki weren't just ancient visitors, they were a returning presence, and their return was imminent. The tension in the air, the hum beneath the earth, the strange visions, it all made terrifying, undeniable sense. He had found a truth that connected his world to the world of ancient gods, and the implications were nothing short of apocalyptic. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content. Hit that like button now and share it with someone who needs to see this. The star map, etched with an impossible precision onto the ancient stone, seemed to glow with an internal fire in the fading light. Ethan ran his gloved fingers over the raised contours, tracing the trajectory of Nibiru, the winged disk, heading relentlessly towards the familiar constellations of Earth's solar system. The discovery was monumental, a seismic shift in his understanding of everything. It wasn't just a partial truth. It was a devastating revelation, a tangible piece of evidence that corroborated the most controversial theories about the Anunnaki and their celestial home. His mind reeled, trying to process the enormity of it. This map wasn't just a record of the past. It was a prophecy, a cosmic clock ticking down to an unknown future. The tension that had been building for weeks now coiled tight in his stomach, a cold, hard knot of fear and awe. He was standing on the precipice of a truth so profound, so paradigm-shattering, that it could unravel the very fabric of human civilization. He photographed the star map from every conceivable angle, using a special polarized filter to enhance the faint etchings. He also took detailed measurements, comparing them to modern astronomical data. While the ancient map's representation was symbolic, the relative positions and trajectory were undeniably accurate, correlating with advanced astronomical models of a theoretical rogue planet. This wasn't guesswork. It was a highly sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics, far beyond the capabilities of any known ancient civilization. The desert night descended quickly, swallowing the last vestiges of daylight, plunging the ruins into an inky blackness, punctuated only by the brilliance of countless stars. The air grew dense, heavy with an unspoken anticipation. The hum from beneath the earth, which had become a constant companion, now vibrated with a more pronounced intensity, a deeper resonance that seemed to echo the impending arrival of the planet depicted on the stone. Ethan retrieved his satellite phone from his pack. He had resisted using it, preferring the solitude of his work, but now the urgency of his discovery demanded communication. He needed to share this, to warn someone, anyone, about what he had found. He tried to get a signal, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. No service. He cursed under his breath, shaking the phone, but it was useless. The remote location, coupled with what he suspected was an intentional interference, rendered it a useless brick. He wasn't alone. He hadn't been alone for a long time. Not really. The feeling of being watched, once an unsettling intuition, was now a certainty. The silence of the desert was deceptive. It was a silence filled with unseen eyes, with ancient presences that had observed him from the moment he set foot on this forbidden ground. He was a pawn in a game far older than humanity, a game whose rules he was only just beginning to comprehend. He spent the night meticulously documenting the star map, drawing precise diagrams, translating the surrounding cuneiform, which now, with the context of the map, revealed itself to be an explanatory text. It spoke of cycles, of alignments, of the Great Return. It warned of the shift of ages and the re-establishment of the ancient order. The language was poetic, allegorical, but chillingly clear. It was a prophecy and a command. As the pre-dawn light began to soften the edges of the horizon, Ethan felt a sudden, profound shift in the atmosphere. The air grew colder, the hum beneath the earth intensified to a low thrum that vibrated through his very bones, and a faint, ethereal mist began to rise from the ground, swirling around the ancient stones like ghostly apparitions. It was a phenomenon he had never witnessed in the desert, a mist that seemed to defy the arid climate, born of something deeper, something unnatural. He stood up, clutching the metallic cylinder in one hand, his headlamp cutting a shaky beam through the swirling fog. He felt a primal fear, a deep-seated terror that transcended his academic curiosity. This wasn't just about unraveling history, it was about confronting an imminent reality, a destiny forged in the stars. Suddenly, a faint whisper brushed against his ear. So soft it could have been the wind, yet it carried a distinct, articulate phrase, spoken in an ancient language that somehow, impossibly, he understood. It was Sumerian, but a purer, older dialect than any he had ever studied. The voice was deep, resonant, and seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the very stones, from the swirling mist, from the depths of his own mind. Enlil Numergal, Uanzuab, the great Lord of Command, the Watcher of the Deep. The words were not just heard, they were felt, resonating through his consciousness like a tuning fork. He spun around, trying to locate the source, but there was nothing, only the swirling mist and the silent, imposing ruins. He knew with an absolute certainty that he was hearing things, things that defied logic, things that should not be possible. But the clarity of the voice, the undeniable meaning of the words, was too profound to dismiss as hallucination. Then a flicker of movement in the mist. A shadow, too tall, too slender, too precise to be human, drifted silently past a crumbling archway. It was gone in an instant, a fleeting image that left behind an imprint of cold, ancient power. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. He wasn't just being watched, he was being engaged. This was the third emotional explosion. Not a memory, not a vision, but a direct, undeniable interaction, a hidden truth revealed not by an artifact, but by a presence, a voice, a shadow that moved at the periphery of his perception. Someone, or something, was speaking to him, guiding him, drawing him deeper into the labyrinth of this ancient secret. The revelation wasn't just about Nibiru, it was about the entities connected to it, the Anunnaki, who were clearly still active, still observing, still manipulating the threads of human destiny, and they had just made their presence known, whispering a phrase that should never have been spoken, a direct affirmation of their ancient authority. Adrin. The ancient Sumerian words, Enlil Numergal Uanzuab, echoed in Ethan's mind, a chilling pronouncement that seemed to reverberate from the very depths of history. The voice, simultaneously ethereal and resonant, had spoken directly to him, confirming his deepest fears and most outlandish theories. The shadow, too quick, too precise, too alien, had been a fleeting glimpse of the unseen forces at play. He was no longer just an archaeologist, he was an unwitting participant, drawn into a cosmic drama that spanned millennia. He stood rigid, the metallic cylinder clutched tightly in his hand, his eyes darting frantically through the swirling mist. The air was thick with an unnatural energy, a palpable tension that pressed down on him, stealing his breath. The low thrum from beneath the earth had become a pulsating beat, a primal rhythm that seemed to synchronize with his own frantic heartbeat. He felt a profound sense of disorientation, as if the veil between worlds had thinned, allowing ancient realities to bleed into his own. The whispers began again, not distinct words this time, but a chorus of faint, murmurous sounds, like a multitude of voices speaking in unison just beyond the edge of audibility. They seemed to weave in and out of the swirling mist, creating a hypnotic, almost maddening symphony of the unknown. He fought against the urge to cover his ears, to scream into the void, forcing himself to remain calm, to observe, to understand. He took a cautious step forward, then another, moving deeper into the heart of the ruins. The mist swirled around his legs, clinging to his clothes, cold and damp against his skin. The ground-penetrating radar, which he still carried, began to emit a rapid, insistent series of beeps, indicating a massive structural anomaly directly ahead. He followed the signal, his headlamp beam cutting a narrow tunnel through the thick fog. He found himself standing before a colossal stone archway, previously hidden by accumulated sand and debris. It was intricately carved, adorned with the same geometric symbols that adorned the cylinder and the basalt slab. The archway seemed to shimmer faintly in the mist, as if vibrating with an internal energy. It wasn't merely an entrance, it felt like a gateway, a threshold to something profound and ancient. As he approached, the metallic cylinder in his hand pulsed with a brighter, more insistent blue light, and the hum it emitted intensified, almost painful in its resonance. The geometric symbols on its surface flared, projecting a faint, ethereal holographic image into the mist before him. It was the same complex pattern he had seen in his initial vision. The mandala of interwoven symbols, now swirling and morphing like a living diagram. He realized with a jolt of understanding that the cylinder was reacting to the archway, acting as a key, a form of authentication or activation device. The archway was a lock, and the cylinder was designed to unlock it. The knowledge, the technology, the entire history of the Anunnaki, it was all encoded within these ancient structures, waiting for someone to decipher the clues, to complete the circuit. He slowly raised the cylinder, holding it towards the archway. As he did so, the holographic pattern projected from the cylinder seemed to align perfectly with the symbols carved into the stone. A low rumble, deep and guttural, emanated from beneath the earth, growing in intensity until the very ground began to tremble beneath his feet. Fine particles of sand rained down from the ancient ceiling, dislodged by the seismic tremors. The archway itself began to glow, not with the soft blue of the cylinder, but with an intense, blinding white light that seemed to pulse from within the stone. The geometric symbols on its surface flared, mirroring the holographic projection, intertwining and dancing in a dizzying display of light and energy. The whispers intensified, becoming a deafening roar in his mind, a cacophony of ancient voices speaking in unison, praising, commanding, warning. This was the Virada III, the monumental shift. Ethan was no longer merely observing, he was actively triggering, activating, engaging with forces beyond his comprehension. He realized, with a chilling certainty, that he was involved in something far, far greater than he had ever imagined. The Anunnaki weren't just distant historical figures. They were a living, breathing presence, their influence permeating this site, guiding his every step, pulling him inexorably towards an inevitable destiny. He was a piece on their cosmic chessboard, and the game had just entered its most critical phase. The story had become darker, deeper, more profoundly revealing. He was in their temple, and they were watching, waiting. The blinding white light from the archway, now pulsating with an almost unbearable intensity, illuminated the swirling mist with an ethereal glow, transforming the ancient ruins into a landscape of ghostly luminescence. Ethan shielded his eyes, but the light seemed to penetrate his eyelids, burning the image of intricate geometric patterns onto his retina. The ground continued to rumble, a deep, resonant vibration that threatened to shake the very foundations of the earth, and the air crackled with impalpable energy, the scent of ozone now thick and acrid. He staggered backward, overwhelmed, but a strange, compelling force held him rooted to the spot. It was as if the archway, now fully activated, was exerting a powerful magnetic pull, drawing him deeper into its mystery. The metallic cylinder in his hand glowed with furious intensity, its hum now a high-pitched whine that resonated painfully in his ears. The whispers, which had previously been a cacophony, now coalesced into a single dominant voice in his mind, clearer and more authoritative than before. It was the same resonant Sumerian voice that had whispered to him earlier, but now it spoke with an undeniable command. Shu'ul, Zia, Kigu, open, life, Earth's core. The words, though ancient, conveyed an immediate, visceral understanding. It wasn't just language, it was a direct psychic implantation of meaning, a download of intent. The archway wasn't just a portal, it was a gateway to something profound, something connected to the very life force of the planet. Ethan felt a profound sense of dread, mixed with an unshakable compulsion to obey. He was no longer in control, he was merely an instrument. As the voice resonated, the white light from the archway flared, reaching a crescendo of blinding brilliance, and then slowly it began to coalesce, to solidify. The air within the archway shimmered, distorting, then resolved into a swirling vortex of deep, inky blackness, interspersed with pinpricks of iridescent light. It was not a physical opening, but a gateway to another dimension, another reality, a portal to the cosmic void. Ethan stumbled forward, drawn by an invisible current, his legs moving against his conscious will. His mind screamed for him to resist, to run, to flee from this impossible nightmare, but his body moved inexorably towards the swirling abyss. He felt an intense emotional cocktail of fear, confusion, and a strange, almost ecstatic awe. This was it, the ultimate truth, the threshold to the Anunnaki realm. As he reached the edge of the portal, a sudden blinding flash of light erupted from the metallic cylinder in his hand. The symbol of the 3 dots within a circle, which he had first seen on the basalt slab, now burned onto his consciousness with agonizing clarity. It was not just a symbol, it was a diagram, a schematic, a representation of celestial mechanics, but also something more, a direct connection, a living conduit to the Anunnaki themselves. And then a vision, more vivid, more overwhelming than any he had experienced before, tore through his mind, ripping through the fabric of his reality. He saw himself, not as Ethan Vance, the archaeologist, but as a different being, older, grander, standing before a colossal, shimmering city of crystalline towers on a red-hued planet. He was one of them, one of the tall, regal figures with elongated features and luminous eyes. He saw himself walking among them, speaking their ancient language, participating in their cosmic councils. He felt the weight of their immense knowledge, the burden of their immortality, the cold, calculating logic of their grand design. He saw the decision, the consensus, the collective will to create a slave race, to genetically engineer early hominids to toil in their mines, to extract the precious gold needed to save their dying atmosphere. He saw the debates, the dissenting voices, the eventual implementation of the grand plan. He saw the first humans, crude and primitive, infused with the spark of Anunnaki DNA, given the gift of intelligence, language, and tool-making, but always constrained, always subservient. He saw the manipulations, the floods, the cataclysms, the deliberate interventions to guide human history, to reset civilizations, to ensure their long-term objectives were met. He saw the gods descending in their sky chariots, not as benevolent deities but as overseers, engineers of a planetary experiment. He saw the construction of this very temple, not as a place of worship, but as a communication hub, a genetic laboratory, a portal maintenance station. This wasn't just a vision, it was a memory, a forbidden memory, deeply buried in his own genetic code, activated by the cylinder, by the portal, by the very presence of the Anunnaki. He was a descendant, a hybrid, carrying the diluted blood of his creators, and this place, this temple, was awakening that ancient lineage within him. The symbol he had seen, the 3 dots in a circle, was not merely a symbol of cosmic order, it was a genetic marker, an identifier, a signature of the Anunnaki within humanity. This was the 4th emotional explosion, a symbol appearing not in the wrong place, but in the right place, confirming a terrifying personal connection. A voice not merely whispering, but commanding. A vision not just tearing the line between real and impossible, but obliterating it entirely, revealing his own inherent connection to the ancient alien architects of humanity. He was not just an observer, he was a participant, perhaps even a key in their grand design. The overwhelming vision receded, leaving Ethan gasping, sprawled on the cold, damp ground before the swirling abyss of the archway. The metallic cylinder lay discarded beside him, its blue light extinguished, its surface once again dull and inert. His head throbbed with a pain far beyond any physical injury, his mind reeling from the deluge of forbidden knowledge, the terrifying revelation of his own genetic heritage. He was not merely a descendant, he was, in some profound and horrifying way, one of them. A fragment of Anunnaki consciousness, awakened within a human form. He pushed himself up, his limbs feeling heavy and alien, as if his body was struggling to contain the vastness of the memories now imprinted on his soul. The swirling vortex within the archway pulsed rhythmically, a silent beckoning more to another reality. He felt an intense mixture of horror and exhilaration, a primal fear of the unknown battling with an undeniable pull towards the truth, towards his own origin. The ruins around him seemed to hum with a new, profound energy, a palpable awareness. The mist, which had briefly cleared during his vision, now swirled back, thicker and colder, obscuring the distant edges of the excavation site. The sense of danger had intensified, evolving into a feeling of inevitability, a cosmic tide that was slowly but surely pulling him towards its ultimate destination. He looked at the discarded cylinder, then at his own hands, calloused and stained with desert dust, but now feeling strangely powerful, connected to something ancient and immense. The memory of the crystalline city, the reddish-brown planet, the genetic laboratories, the cold, calculating logic of the Anunnaki. It was all profoundly real, seared into his consciousness. He understood now why these memories had been suppressed, why this history had been meticulously erased. The truth was too devastating, too dehumanizing, too fundamentally challenging to humanity's sense of self. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that he could not turn back. The path ahead, through that swirling portal, was the only path left. To deny it would be to deny his very essence, the awakened fragment of Anunnaki consciousness that now pulsed within him. He was a chosen one, not by divine will, but by genetic design, a hybrid key to unlocking the ultimate truth. He retrieved the cylinder, holding it again. This time it did not light up, but it felt warm in his hand, a conduit to the power that coursed through the archway. He felt a surge of ancient purpose, a cold determination that pushed aside his human fears. His individual identity as Ethan Vance, the outcast archaeologist, seemed to recede, replaced by a larger, more ancient identity, a fragment of the Anunnaki collective. As he stood at the precipice of the swirling portal, a final wave of understanding washed over him. The Anunnaki had not just visited Earth, they had engineered it, seeded it, cultivated humanity as a resource, a tool. And now their cycles were aligning, their return was imminent, and he, Ethan Vance, was meant to be a bridge, a messenger, perhaps even a guide for their re-establishment on Earth. He focused on the swirling blackness of the portal, his mind clear, his resolve unwavering. He had spent his life chasing fragments of forgotten history, yearning for answers. Now the answers were here, terrifyingly complete, and they demanded his full participation. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the cold, ozone-scented air, and prepared to step through the gateway. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from within the portal, not the soft white light of activation, but a stark, intensely bright, almost painful burst of pure energy. The swirling blackness vanished, replaced by a panoramic vision of impossible clarity, projected directly into his mind, bypassing his physical eyes. It was a view from above, from space. He saw Earth, a blue marble against the blackness, but it was not the Earth he knew. It was a primordial Earth, shrouded in dense clouds, its surface scarred by volcanic activity and nascent oceans. And then, slowly, majestically, a colossal reddish-brown planet emerged from behind the moon, its immense gravity rippling across space, distorting the light of distant stars. It was Nibiru, unmistakable and awe-inspiring, its winged disk emblem emblazoned across its northern pole. He saw fleets of colossal, shimmering spacecraft, hundreds, perhaps thousands, descending from Nibiru towards the primordial Earth. They were not crude vessels, but elegant, biomechanical constructs, alive with an internal light. He saw the Anunnaki disembarking, tall, regal, their forms both terrifying and magnificent. He saw them establishing their first settlements, their mining operations, their genetic laboratories, and then a direct, undeniable image of himself, or rather, his original Anunnaki self, standing within one of those laboratories, overlooking a series of stasis pods. Inside each pod, a proto-human form, an early hominid, was suspended, slowly transforming, evolving, being genetically reshaped by beams of iridescent light. His own ancient self, with its elongated features and glowing eyes, held a tablet of cuneiform, meticulously documenting the process, outlining the genetic sequences, the sacred origin of humanity. This was the Virada 4, the devastating truth, laid bare, not as a metaphor or an allegory, but as a direct, undeniable historical record. He was witnessing, through his own awakened Anunnaki memory, the very moment of humanity's creation, the genetic manipulation that birthed civilization. It was the instant he finally saw what was hidden, not just an ancient god or an artifact, but the literal, scientific, extraterrestrial beginning of his own species. The revelation was immense, intense, and utterly cinematographic, a cosmic tableau of creation. Yet even this grand unveiling left something greater pending. The ultimate final revelation still remained tantalizingly beyond. The vivid panoramic vision of humanity's genetic genesis faded, leaving Ethan standing once more before the now inert archway, the swirling vortex replaced by solid ancient stone. The metallic cylinder, which had served as his key and conduit, now lay cold and heavy in his hand, its purpose seemingly fulfilled. His mind, however, remained a maelstrom of images and emotions. The primordial Earth, the majestic descent of Nibiru, the clinical precision of the Anunnaki laboratories, and the horrifying, undeniable truth of humanity's engineered origin. He was no longer Ethan Vance, the struggling archaeologist. He was a vessel, a living archive of forbidden knowledge, a bridge between two worlds. The weight of this truth pressed down on him, not just conceptually but physically, as if his human form was barely capable of containing the vastness of the Anunnaki consciousness now awakened within him. The air around him felt dense, charged with a profound, almost sacred energy, the scent of ozone, replaced by an earthy, ancient aroma, like freshly turned soil and ancient rain. The ruins, which had once felt like a silent tomb, now pulsed with a subtle internal life. The hum beneath the earth, previously a distant thrum, now resonated with a deep rhythmic beat, like a colossal heart slowly beating in the earth's core. The mist, which still clung to the shadows, seemed to coalesce into indistinct forms at the periphery of his vision, fleeting glimpses of ancient guardians, silent watchers observing his every move. He looked around, a profound sense of solitude washing over him. He was utterly alone, yet never before had he felt so profoundly connected to something vast and timeless. The isolation was a double-edged sword. It granted him clarity, unburdened by external distractions, but it also amplified the terrifying responsibility that now rested upon his shoulders. Who would believe him? Who could even comprehend the magnitude of what he had discovered, what he had become? His gaze fell upon a small, intricate carving on a nearby stone, previously unnoticed amidst the grandeur of the archway. It depicted a series of concentric circles, with a single larger circle at the center, surrounded by 12 smaller ones. Around them, an array of symbols, geometric and precise, formed an outer ring. It was a cosmic clock, a calendar detailing the precise cycles of Nibiru, its orbit, and its recurring proximity to Earth. It was the final piece of the puzzle, confirming not just the Anunnaki's past interventions, but their future intentions. As he traced the lines of the cosmic clock, a final chilling realization solidified in his mind. The Anunnaki were not merely returning, they were returning to reclaim what they had created. Humanity was their legacy, their experiment, and now the time had come for them to assess the results, to perhaps re-engineer or even reset the entire civilization. The very concept of free will, of independent human destiny, was a cruel illusion. The air grew heavy, thick with a sense of impending inevitability, as if the cosmic gears were grinding into place. The light of the rising sun, now a brilliant, searing disk above the horizon, seemed to struggle to pierce the heavy atmosphere, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like phantoms across the ancient stones. Ethan felt a powerful, almost irresistible urge, a primal command, resonating from the depths of his awakened consciousness. He looked down at the metallic cylinder in his hand. It was not just a data storage device, it was a remote activation unit, a control mechanism for something far grander, far more ancient. He felt a sudden, profound understanding of its true purpose, a flash of pure intent downloaded directly into his mind. He was meant to activate something, not just the portal, but something deeper, something fundamental to the Anunnaki's presence on Earth. Without conscious thought, his fingers moved, tracing a specific pattern on the cylinder's smooth surface, a sequence of gestures that felt both ancient and instinctively correct, as if he had performed them countless times before. The cylinder vibrated intensely in his grip, its silent hum rising to a crescendo that resonated directly within his skull, vibrating every bone in his body. Then, the final explosion. Not an external vision, not a whispered command, but an internal, visceral eruption of pure, unadulterated intent. A profound, almost overwhelming understanding of a choice that was not his own, yet felt utterly inevitable. He raised the cylinder towards the center of the cosmic clock carving, his arm moving with a fluid, purposeful grace that was entirely un-Ethan. He felt a surge of immense power, a connection to a vast planetary network that hummed beneath the Earth's crust. He was activating something colossal, a gesture unexpected by his conscious mind, a decision that went against all logic, yet he made it without understanding why, compelled by an ancient, genetic imperative. The cylinder, now burning with an internal white light, seemed to merge with the stone carving, dissolving into a shimmering cascade of energy that flowed into the heart of the cosmic clock. This gesture, this final profound action, was not merely an activation. It was a profound act of surrender. He was not just revealing the truth, he was enacting it, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of human history. The Anunnaki had not just left clues, they had left a mechanism, a trigger, and he, Ethan Vance, had just pulled it. The ultimate truth was no longer just a memory or a vision. It was an unfolding reality, one that he had now irrevocably accelerated. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content. Hit that like button now and share it with someone who needs to see this. As the metallic cylinder dissolved into a shimmering cascade of light, merging with the cosmic clock carving, a deafening roar erupted from deep within the earth, a sound that transcended any known seismic event. It was a primal bellow, a resonant tremor that shook the very foundations of the world, sending Ethan stumbling backward, his ears ringing, his vision blurring. The ground bucked violently, throwing him to his knees, and vast cracks, like fissures in reality, spiderwebbed across the ancient stone floor of the temple. The air grew impossibly dense, thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning ozone. Above, the relentless desert sun seemed to waver, its light flickering as if struggling to pierce a rapidly thickening atmospheric veil. The sky, once a brilliant blue, began to darken, not with the approach of night, but with a strange, unnatural gloom, a metallic haze that filtered the sunlight into an ominous, reddish tint. The cosmic clock carving, now absorbing the energy from the cylinder, began to pulse with an intense, blinding white light, growing in luminosity until it was impossible to look at directly. The geometric symbols etched into its surface spun and shifted, forming intricate three-dimensional patterns that projected into the air, swirling like a living tapestry of light. It was a global activation, a planetary recalibration, triggered by the ancient mechanisms of the Anunnaki. Ethan, shielding his eyes with a dust-caked arm, could feel the immense power radiating from the carving, a raw, untamed energy that resonated with the very core of the planet. He felt a chilling sense of both exhilaration and profound horror. He had not merely opened a portal, he had activated a colossal machine, a device of unfathomable power and purpose, deeply integrated into the earth itself. The whispers, which had been subtle, now returned stronger and clearer, but they were no longer just in his mind. They were in the very air, vibrating through the stones, echoing from the swirling dust. A chorus of ancient voices speaking in unison, in Sumerian, in a dialect that now felt as natural to him as his own mother tongue, filled the entire temple complex. Kigalu, Anshar, Nibiru Kimu'u, Great Earth, Heaven's totality, Nibiru's coming. The words were a direct announcement, a declaration of intent, broadcast across the awakened temple. The meaning was terrifyingly clear. The earth was being prepared, the heavens were aligning, and Nibiru was indeed on its way. The revelation wasn't just about human origins. It was about human destiny, a destiny intertwined with the cyclical return of its creators. As the voices chanted, the ground continued to tremble, and a vast subterranean rumbling began to resonate from directly beneath the temple. A sound so deep it bypasses the ears and reverberated directly in the chest. Then slowly, majestically, the entire central courtyard of the temple, a colossal expanse of ancient paving stones, began to rise, slowly ascending on unseen mechanisms, like a giant ancient elevator. Dust and debris rained down, obscuring the sky, but Ethan could see the sheer scale of the rising platform. It was enormous, easily covering several acres, and as it ascended it revealed a gaping, perfectly circular chasm beneath, filled with an eerie, pulsing blue light. This was no ordinary excavation site. This was a direct, colossal manifestation of Anunnaki technology, a subterranean complex of immense power, now brought to life. He crawled towards the edge of the rising platform, clinging to a broken column as the ground beneath him shifted and groaned. He peered into the chasm, his headlamp beams swallowed by the vast glowing depths. He saw intricate networks of metallic structures, pulsating energy conduits, and colossal crystalline formations, all bathed in the ethereal blue light. It was a massive, ancient machine, a planetary control system, a colossal engine of creation and recreation. And at the very center of the chasm, suspended in a field of pure blue energy, was a colossal, shimmering disk. It was intricately designed, adorned with the same geometric symbols that had appeared on the cylinder and the cosmic clock. It hummed with immense power, generating the pervasive blue light that filled the chasm. This was the heart of the Anunnaki presence on Earth, the ultimate artifact, the true purpose of the temple. It was a planetary orchestrator, a device capable of manipulating Earth's geophysics, its atmosphere, perhaps even its biological evolution. This was the Virada 5, the true climax, the desfecho that closed the cycle but opened an unimaginable abyss. Ethan was now facing the complete truth, an ancestral secret about the Anunnaki, about the true origin of human life, about their impending return, and about their absolute, unquestionable manipulation of Earth's history and the ultimate destiny of civilization. This revelation was not delivered as an answer, but as an impact, a raw, undeniable force that shattered all previous conceptions of reality. He didn't need explanations. He had witnessed the ultimate truth, a silent, powerful testament to the Anunnaki's mastery over life and planetary engineering. The narrator never fully explains. The images, the sounds, the sheer, overwhelming power of the activated temple and the colossal disk beneath, it all spoke for itself. Ethan, the human, was gone, replaced by a resonant understanding, an acceptance of his place in this grand cosmic design. The universe was not as he thought it was, and humanity was merely a chapter in a much, much larger story, written by beings from another star, whose return was now not just imminent, but actively being facilitated. The final phrase hung in the air, a chilling echo. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content. Hit that like button now and share it with someone who needs to see this. The colossal disk, pulsating with an eerie blue light at the heart of the chasm, hummed with an almost deafening intensity, its resonant thrum vibrating through every fiber of Ethan's being. The entire temple, now fully activated, shimmered with a raw, untamed energy, the ancient stones groaning under the immense power now coursing through them. The reddish tint of the sky deepened, casting an apocalyptic glow over the rising dust and the vast, arid expanse of the desert. This wasn't merely a discovery. It was the unveiling of a forgotten god, a technological deity brought to life, and Ethan Vance was its reluctant priest. He gazed into the chasm, transfixed by the shimmering disk, a cosmic engine of immense power. It was clearly not just a single artifact, but the central node of a planetary network capable of affecting Earth on a fundamental level. The geometric symbols etched onto its surface pulsed with a synchronized rhythm, displaying patterns of energy flow and data transmission. A language of light that spoke of celestial mechanics, genetic coding, and planetary manipulation. He understood with a chilling clarity that this device had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the precise cosmic alignment and perhaps for a specific genetic signature to initiate its final awakening. The whispers, which had become a booming chorus, now intensified, coalescing into a singular commanding voice that resonated not just in his mind, but in the very core of his awakened Anunnaki consciousness. It spoke of cycles, of the harvest, of the reseeding, of the inevitable alignment with Nibiru. It was the voice of the collective Anunnaki, transmitted across the vastness of space, preparing the way for their return. He felt a profound sense of despair, a crushing realization of humanity's true place in the cosmic order. All of human history, all our struggles, our triumphs, our dreams had been part of a grand experiment, a carefully orchestrated narrative designed and overseen by these ancient, powerful beings. The concepts of freedom, destiny, and self-determination were mere illusions, meticulously maintained for the duration of the experiment. Now, the experiment was reaching its conclusion. He looked around at the rising platform, at the vast, yawning chasm beneath, at the colossal disk pulsating with alien power. This was not just a temple. It was a beacon, a homing signal, a planetary control panel. Its activation meant one thing. The Anunnaki were not merely returning, they were arriving heralded by the very planet they had manipulated. The final explosion wasn't an external event, but a profound internal shift, a complete surrender. He reached out his hand, not to touch the disk, but to acknowledge its power, to accept his role. He didn't understand why he was doing it, but a deep, primal instinct, a genetic memory, compelled him. He felt the immense power of the activated temple flowing through him, connecting him to the planetary network, to the ancient wisdom of the Anunnaki. His human self, Ethan Vance, was gone, subsumed by the vastness of the alien consciousness, now fully awakened. This final, profound gesture was not a choice. It was an inevitability, a pre-programmed response. He had been a key, a catalyst, and now he was a witness to the dawn of a new era, or perhaps the end of an old one. The colossal disk at the center of the chasm began to slowly rotate, its blue light flaring with renewed intensity, casting long, ethereal shadows across the intricate structures beneath. A high-pitched, resonant hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space and time, emanated from the disk, rising in pitch until it was almost unbearable. The air shimmered, distorting, and a faint, shimmering vortex of light began to coalesce directly above the disk, reaching up towards the darkened sky. This was the Virada 5, 100%, the ultimate desfecho that closed one cycle and opened an unimaginable abyss. Ethan, no longer just a human, but a conduit of ancient knowledge, now faced the complete, unvarnished truth. The shimmering vortex above the disk was not merely a light show. It was an activation, a spatial distortion, a massive planetary portal opening. He saw it with perfect clarity, not just with his eyes, but with every fiber of his being, a cosmic gateway unfurling, waiting. And through that shimmering gateway, barely perceptible at first, then growing in immense size and presence, a colossal, reddish-brown celestial body began to emerge. It was Nibiru, unmistakable, majestic, its ancient winged disk emblem now visible on its surface, not as a carving, but as a vast, glowing symbol of its power. It wasn't just a planet. It was a living entity, a celestial titan slowly but inexorably re-entering Earth's orbit, heralded by the awakening of its ancient temple. This revelation was not delivered as a spoken answer, but as a visceral, overwhelming impact, a visual and emotional tsunami that shattered every human concept of reality. The Anunnaki were here, their home world had returned, and humanity, their creation, their experiment, was about to face its true architects, its ancient kings. The narrator never offers a complete explanation. He merely describes the unfolding horror and grandeur, leaving the ultimate interpretation to the viewer. The final truth is not a simple fact. It is an existential earthquake. The colossal shadow of Nibiru began to fall across the earth, darkening the sky further, not with night, but with an alien twilight, a pervasive reddish gloom. The chanting from the ancient voices grew to a crescendo, a final, triumphant declaration of return. Ethan, standing amidst the ruins of the awakened temple, felt a profound, chilling sense of peace. He had found his answers, and the cost was everything. The narrator ends slowly, letting the images linger, the questions echo. The world had irrevocably changed. This story is just a piece of something much larger, a truth waiting to be fully uncovered. If you've made it this far without hitting pause, it's because this narrative has captivated you. Then bolster this content. Hit that like button now and share it with someone who needs to see this. Abystil, the vast, imposing silhouette of Nibiru, the legendary 12th planet, loomed larger in the darkening reddish sky, a silent, monumental harbinger of a new epoch. Its gravitational pull, subtle at first, now began to exert its influence, manifesting as faint tremors that continuously rippled through the Earth's crust, a cosmic drumbeat announcing its imminent arrival. The air, thick with the scent of ozone and ancient dust, seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, a tangible anticipation that clung to every particle. Ethan, or the awakened consciousness that now resided within his form, stood unmoving amidst the churning chaos of the activated temple, a silent witness to the dawn of a new, terrifying reality. The massive disk within the chasm continued its slow, deliberate rotation, its blue light casting an ethereal glow upwards, illuminating the underbelly of the newly visible structures that had risen from the desert floor. These weren't mere architectural remains. They were colossal, biomechanical instruments, pulsating with internal light and humming with a deep, resonant frequency. Intricate networks of conduits, gleaming with unknown metals, crisscrossed the exposed walls of the chasm, leading down into the glowing depths, connecting to the planetary core itself. This entire complex was an Anunnaki-engineered system designed to facilitate Nibiru's return and the re-establishment of their ancient dominion. The ancient voices, now a harmonious choir of immense power, resonated not from external sources, but directly within the activated structures, echoing through the very stones of the temple. They chanted a complex narrative of creation, dominion, and regenesis, detailing the Anunnaki's grand design for Earth and humanity. It was a story of cyclical time, of periodic interventions, and of humanity's role as both progeny and resource. The chilling truth solidified in Ethan's mind. There was no escape, no free will, only the fulfillment of a predetermined cosmic destiny. The shimmering portal above the central disk continued to expand, the swirling vortex of light now revealing glimpses of distant stars and nebulae, a cosmic window to another part of the universe. And through that expanding gateway, not just Nibiru, but colossal, sleek spacecraft began to emerge, hundreds, perhaps thousands, materializing silently from the void. They were not primitive ships, but magnificent living machines, vast and imposing, their surfaces gleaming with an obsidian-like sheen, adorned with the same geometric symbols that had guided Ethan's journey. These were the chariots of the gods, returning to claim their legacy. A profound silence descended upon the temple, a sudden, unnerving cessation of the chanting, the rumbling, the humming. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic thrum of the ascending spacecraft and the increasing gravitational pull of Nibiru, now visibly closer in the sky. It was a silence filled with immense power, a moment of cosmic punctuation before the final act. Then from the lead spacecraft, a single brilliant beam of pure incandescent light descended, piercing the dense atmosphere and striking the exact center of the colossal disk in the chasm. The disk flared with a blinding intensity, and the entire temple complex pulsed, bathed in an overwhelming surge of energy. The ground beneath Ethan's feet vibrated violently, but he remained rooted, an unwavering sentinel. This was the final, inevitable culmination, the direct connection, the transmission of planetary control, the reintegration of Earth into the Anunnaki's grand cosmic empire. The revelation wasn't delivered with words, but with raw, unadulterated power, a force that reshaped reality itself. Ethan, or the Anunnaki consciousness within him, understood everything now. The purpose of the gold, the genetic manipulation, the seeded myths, the deliberate suppression of true history. It was all part of a meticulously executed plan, spanning millennia, designed for this very moment. Humanity was a carefully cultivated garden, and the gardeners had returned for the harvest. The colossal beam of light from the spacecraft pulsed, and a vast, shimmering field of energy enveloped the entire temple, extending outwards across the desert, creating a dome of iridescent light that pulsed and wavered. Within this dome, the atmosphere began to shift, to subtly change, adapting to the arrival of the Anunnaki. It was a terraforming process, an environmental recalibration. The narrator leaves the final images hanging, allowing the raw impact of the scene to speak for itself. The grand truth is revealed not through exposition, but through the overwhelming sensory experience of the unfolding event. The viewer is left to grapple with the implications, to interpret the fate of humanity. The sky, now entirely dominated by the immense reddish orb of Nibiru, began to part, not with clouds, but with shimmering geometric distortions, revealing the true scale of the Anunnaki fleet, an armada of silent, magnificent vessels. The first of them began their slow, majestic descent towards the now fully activated temple, their forms cutting through the alien twilight with an undeniable, ancient authority. The silence was broken only by the low, resonant thrum of their engines, a sound that promised either salvation or subjugation. The final phrase hangs, a chilling echo in the transformed landscape. If this content has opened your mind, comment below, "I saw what he saw." That helps us understand who is truly seeking knowledge beyond the surface. Like the video, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell, because the next episodes will go even deeper. And don't leave without clicking on the next video. It is the continuation of this journey.